hello, everybody. Welcome to our weekly Route Consultant webinar. Super glad you've joined us today. I'm Jesse Smith. I'm the Operations Director for Patent Logistics and one of the Operations Consultants here at Route Consultant. You may have seen me on one of these webinars before. You may have seen me at a past roadshow or an expo, maybe on one of our YouTube videos. If that's you, welcome back. Glad you're here. If you're brand new, we're glad you found us, and we really hope you find this helpful and informative, educational, and along with all that, hopefully fun. We're here to answer any questions you may have. We're going to go over some content. We're going to talk all about Expo 2023 today. So I'm super glad you're here to hear about that. If you have any questions whatsoever, anything FedEx Ground related, we're here to answer that, myself and my co-host, which I'll introduce here soon. Super glad to have you today. So before I get started, I have to do the fun part. I have to read a quick disclaimer. Route Consultant is not endorsed by, it is not recommended by Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Route Consultant is not sponsored by, is not approved by, is not associated with, and has no connection whatsoever with Federal Express Corporation, FedEx Ground, or Amazon. Now, if you've been here before, this is not going to come as a surprise, but we do have a weekly tradition where if you're going to ask us a question and you need us to answer, you have to answer one of our questions first. It's our Q&A tradition here. The question of the day today is, what is your favorite decade of music and why? And I have a feeling our co-host today, I'll introduce in a second, I have a feeling that she will have a thing or two to say about this. So be thinking of that. You can load in your questions at any time during the content or during the Q&A itself. We'll just try to hit those in order as they come. If you do that, make sure you're going to use the Q&A feature at the bottom, not the chat box. If it goes in the chat, we may not see it. We use the chat for things like posting announcements, links, email contacts, things like that. So if you want to ask a question, make sure you use that Q&A button. All right, let's talk about some events we've got coming up. We've got on March 23rd, we've got our happy hour. That's in Miami. Okay, that's March 23rd. Our new investor summit. The next one's going to be virtual, not in person. And this is going to be March 27th and 28th. For any new investors looking to get into the space, this is always what we recommend to get into. If you've not signed up yet and you're interested, please do. We have a line haul specific roadshow coming up on March 30th in Kansas City. So it's not going to be focused on P&D at all. It's going to be line haul only. So make sure if you're interested in that, if you're a current or potential contractor, come see us there. Expo registration, which again, we're going to talk all about today. That's the big one. That's the one you don't want to miss. July 29th and 30th in Las Vegas at the Paris Hotel. This year, registration is open now. RouteConsultantExpo.com if you want to get signed up for that. Okay, so let's talk about, we've got quite a few new listings today. We've got some really healthy inventory. So before we get into our content, I'm going to tell you guys about what we've got on our site. 4 P&D, 2 line haul, 1 Amazon. So buckle up. Here's what we got for you. So on the P&D side, we've got Northeast Texas, 15 routes, 1.4 million, and that's at 78.63% of revenue. Comes with 2 managers and 9 spare trucks. That's a very healthy amount of spare trucks for that many routes. Located in a fast-growing Texas city. It's near Dallas-Fort Worth. Great area full of entertainment, nightlife, dining options, accommodations, high growth area, remote ownership, plenty of spare trucks out, like we said, and it's low daily stem miles. So not far out from the terminal, which is always good, helps to cut down on wear and tear, things like that. So that's Northeast Texas if you're looking there. We've got Central Arizona. This is 12 P&D routes for $925,000 or 59.5% of revenue. This is at a 13.8% EBITDA margin. Comes with 2 managers, 4 spare trucks. It's an excellent operation, very healthy, boasting really, really good profit margins. It's located in a suburban area close to Tucson and Phoenix. It's below terminal scale and has a high ceiling for growth. So that's right where you want to be in terms of terminal scale. Plenty of spare drivers and trucks on hand to cover any logistical issues, contingency situations, call outs, maintenance needs, things like that. Eastern Georgia, we've got a 20 P&D route operation for $1.999 million. Okay, that's at 85.27% of revenue, 17.5% EBITDA margin there. 2 managers, 4 spare trucks. Great opportunity to step into a well-managed operation. Some really great management on deck there. It consists of suburban territory and is close proximity to the terminal, which is good. Those low stem miles for low wear and tear. Excellent fleet included here. All trucks are 2016 or newer. So they do have some high mileage routes. Okay, so these can be easier on drivers depending on your driver mix there. Lower than average turnover here, what we're looking at. The business operates under a 6-day work week. So if you're looking for a terminal that does not have those 7-day operations, this is going to be one you want to look at. And it comes with potentially assumable truck debt as an option. Our last P&D offering here is in Northeastern Illinois, 6 routes for $600,000 at 83.67% of revenue, 17.1% EBITDA margin, comes with 1 manager, 2 spare trucks. It's a profitable operation, and this one only operates Monday through Friday. So got that 5-day ground schedule. So if that's something you're looking for with a nice clean weekend, this is going to be the one for you. This is a rarity in the space. I will tell you, these do not come open very often where it's a ground only operation. So it does provide a really good opportunity for you and your crew to have a really good work-life balance that's not available at every terminal. It's a smaller operation, as I said, manageable. It's really going to be ideal for a new contractor trying to ease into the space. Really good, ideal for that. Low miles and great growth potential in this particular area, especially with the upcoming FedEx Express volume that we're seeing coming into the network. All right, let's go to line haul. Southern Florida, we've got a 3 line haul run operation for $2 million, 105% of revenue, 22.8% EBITDA margin, 2 dedicated team runs and 1 dedicated solo. It's small and manageable, perfect for a new contractor just getting in, remote ownership opportunity. The portfolio consists of all dedicated runs, which again, that's a great guaranteed revenue stream for you. Healthy leased fleet of 2019 and newer tractors. So a good fleet there. Business is based out of a desirable location with great weather nearly year round. If you know anything about South Florida, that's where everyone wants to be. Good opportunity there to pick something up. And then 1 in Central Florida, not too far, 6 line haul runs at $600,000, 33.9% of revenue. This is a 7.6% EBITDA margin, 4 unassigned solos and 2 unassigned teams. Okay. This is a great opportunity for a new contractor. Remote ownership, of course, with it being line haul, it's much easier to be remote. It does consist of all unassigned runs, so be aware of that. These do provide you a really good opportunity to accumulate line haul points if you're able to staff these runs. Great way to build credibility with the network. Healthy leased fleet of tractors, mostly newer models. And again, based out of that central South Florida area, really ideal for weather conditions and things like that. Okay, that's all our FedEx offerings. Let's get to the one Amazon that we have. We have one that fluctuates in Western Maryland. It fluctuates from 20 to 29 daily DSP routes, and they're asking $950,000 or 27.19% of revenue. This is a 9.2% EBITDA margin with 2 managers and 13 spare trucks. So nice, healthy amount of spares there. Good management in place to run daily operations, clean, consistent financial records with strong margins. And of course, the trucks are included. They're part of the Amazon full service lease program, which reduces variable expenses on your maintenance. Territory is close to the warehouse, which cuts down on stem miles, drive time for drivers. Kind of has that home field advantage for drivers there. So those are what we've got for you today. Okay, that was a mouthful. So let's get into our content. And so today, like I said, we're going to be talking all about Expo 2023. This is the one you don't want to miss. Okay, even if you've been to some of our other events this year, our happy hours, our road shows, or you're planning to go to one, you still don't want to miss the Expo. This is literally brand new cutting edge content that we've spent a long time just trying to bring to the table for you guys and offer the very best of what we've found across the industry and the best efficiency, tips and tricks, anything you can think of. We've thought of it. We're bringing it to you at the Expo. So today we're going to share a few of the sessions that we're going to be hosting there at the Expo and some of the content offerings we're really excited about. So to do that, I am so excited to bring on my co-host, and she's not been on here in a hot minute. Okay, so she's super excited, chomping at the bit to get on with you guys. We're glad to have her back on that webinar life. Let me introduce to you the one and only Annalie Kate. Annalie, come on.
Thanks, Jesse. Hi, everybody. I'm so happy to be back and see you guys. As Jesse mentioned, it's my first webinar in a while. I have been at home on maternity leave with a sweet new little baby girl. It just didn't feel right not to give you a little sneak peek. So let me show you what kind of cuteness is happening in my world since I saw you guys last. So this is what, let's see, did it come through, Jesse?
There we go. It's starting. Yep, we see it.
This is what my world looks like. So this is little Charlie Ann. I actually looked over in the side. I think my husband Ray is on today. So I'm betting Charlie Ann's watching my first time on a webinar too. But she was born on the 1st of December. So she's just hit her 3-month mark. It's very expressive, as you can tell. So we get happy days and angry days and skeptical, confused days. But
absolutely adorable.
A ton of fun. So that's the name we settled on, and that's my little one. But I've missed so much being here, and again, it's just really fun to get to come back. But I know that Josh and Jesse and the team have been taking great care of you guys, and certainly have appreciated them creating that space for me to get to enjoy such a special time in my life. But happy to be back this week with you guys and to, yes, talk about the expo. So we have so much exciting stuff planned for the expo this year. There are some big differences that, as we've been trying to think kind of what we wanted 2023 to look like, you know, one of the biggest things that you'll see be different is we really approached the content this year with a couple key objectives. And one was to create separate content tracks at the expo, so that the ultimate goal is we can really go deeper on a number of topics that in past years we maybe just have to scratch the surface on in terms of how to really maximize those areas within your business. But this year we're bringing in amazing experts, a whole new level of depth to the content as we do these different tracks, which is again just going to allow us to really like Jesse said, be on the cutting edge of new strategies and tools to essentially exist in the sandbox that we're in and make the most of our businesses. So I want to be able to talk through some of those different tracks, some of the experts that we're going to be having. We're going to have 2 times the internal route consultant content, a little over 2 times what you've seen in past years. So we've got a ton of speakers planned that are just, you know, purely route consultant content based for you guys as we do that. So we're going to highlight a couple of them here today. The first one is, I don't mean to be biased, but it is what I think is my favorite and the most valuable. And I'll give a couple reasons why, because this has just been a game changer for so many contractors that I've worked with over the last year, and especially in the last few months. So the first one I want to talk through is really all about on the operation side, specifically managing efficiency from a routing and DRO perspective. So you might be wondering what phenomenal expert we would have covering such cutting edge DRO content. And so the drum roll, one of our main speakers on this is actually going to be Jesse Smith himself. And so I had the opportunity to just watch Jesse do a tiny teaser of what he's going to cover at the expo in San Diego at our roadshow. And it's just, it's such great information, and it makes such a huge difference. So Jesse, give us a quick little teaser of kind of what's coming from Expo, because it's obviously totally different content than what we saw in San Diego, but what can we expect from that?
Yeah, so the main things, the 2 things I'm really going to be drilling down on, Annalie, is, and this comes from talking with contractors and really getting that specific feedback of what's out there in the network and what do people need from a DRO perspective. And the big 2 that I'm really going to hit are, number 1, if you're an owner and you've never even looked at your DRO, there is going to be that component of just literally, how do you get by? I mean, there was a situation just recently I talked to an owner about where, you know, the BC had just moved on, just kind of unexpectedly. And so the owner was like, they didn't know what to do, and they had no clue where to even start, how to create the routes. So there will be a component of, hey, you need to know what to do on just a basic level, getting your routes created, right? But then on the sort of the more advanced side of it, one thing that I noticed that contractors aren't really able to do very well, they can't have productive conversations with their BCs about what changes need to be made from that efficiency perspective, like you said, because they don't know how to audit the DRO decision-making process that the BC is making, right? They don't know what a healthy route, what an efficient route, what a good contiguous route, or whatever the factors may be. They don't even know what to look for when it comes to their DRO setup. So basically, we're just going to be talking about what do you look for when you're going in to improve the quality of the discussion with your BC? What kind of things do you look for? And it's going to go deep. I mean, because your BC knows things about your DRO that if you're not looking in there every day, you would never probably know. So we're going to really do a deep dive on that and just all the things that's going to really improve the quality of that discussion, auditing the BC's decision-making process, making sure you're both on the same page to hit your efficiency goals.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such good content. And, one of the things I could tell you guys too, from a lot of the operators I've worked with, especially even just in the last 6 months, I can't tell you how many times I've worked directly with a contractor who, when they come to us in kind of a panic moment, right, where their business is struggling, whether it's a profitability issue that they're literally, struggling to make payments, one day, versus a staffing issue, right? Where maybe they're losing drivers and having some sort of, driver turn situation. We've deployed some of these teachings that Jesse's going to be covering in those solutions. And I have seen night and day overnight changes in these operations where, contractors are on the brink of failure, literally to turning it around, to being able to regain control of the business, stabilize things, be profitable, and look towards the future. So I a little bit get chills when I talk about it, because it really is one of those things that it's an everyday piece of the business that if you get wrong, the amount of implications that has on the rest of the business, it can be incredibly dramatic differences. And the other thing too is, as we look towards 2023, it's really attacking what's happening right now. And one of the biggest things happening in the space right now is that we see a little less predictability, right, in terms of our volume and being able to anticipate what one day is going to look like from one day to the next. And so, we've got to be responsive to those types of changes. And in order to combat that lack of predictability, Jesse, a lot of what I've seen you cover, which if you want to, again, maybe give like little teaser or one or two things, right, just to give a little bit of a sneak peek, but kind of how you coach people through a few small adjustments that give them much better control on the predictability, or at least how to adapt to the lack thereof.
Yeah. And that's going to be a part of any DRO discussion that I have, because again, that's just so pervasive. You're so right. I mean, everybody's going to have numbers that show up in DRO that are wrong, right? It's a feature of the system, just because of the way the network moves and the unpredictability that's inherent in it. It's just a part of it, right? And FedEx knows that it's an issue, but the way I try to get people around that, and thankfully DRO actually has features built in now where you can see a 4-week look back at historical data. How many stops did I have last week on this day of the week, right? But keeping that 4 to 6 week look back period, even down to the route level of how many stops did each guy go out with, each driver go out with, and keeping detailed logs of that. Because let's face it, you need to know when that next Tuesday rolls around, you need to know what the last 4 or 5, 6 Tuesdays have looked like to be able to predict what that next Tuesday is going to look like. And on top of that, again, if you have that data in front of you and you've been keeping that faithfully, when you go to FedEx, and if there's a major staffing discrepancy, you can be like, look, I'm having to basically keep an extra person on board because the variance that I see is the equivalent of basically having an entire route that I have to keep in flux, right? Whether I don't know if I'm going to have to run this driver, maybe I'm going to have to run an extra driver, right? So keeping that historical data, that's going to be a part of any DR discussion I talk about. I will absolutely show you how to do that, how to master that process. It's not that complicated. You just have to do it.
Absolutely. And one other thing I'll say on that particular track is this is especially a year where I think with a lot of the content that's going to be covered, but especially the stuff Jesse's covering, it's a great year if you can pull your BCs away from the business. They're going to benefit so much, not just from the community and, again, from getting to work with like-minded people that are facing those same daily challenges and sharing best practices that they can then bring back to improving your businesses, but they're going to get to hear from experts that are really solving the big problems in those specific areas that are most challenging for them day to day. So it's a great year to bring your BCs if you can. We would love to see them out there in Vegas this year as well, if you can steal them away from the business. So any other big pieces you think Jesse, or, maybe one other one too is like, what would you say, I'm curious, the number one mistake that you see operators make in DRO?
Ooh, that's tough. I would have to say the prediction part. They just don't keep accurate logs, or they don't keep logs at all. They just really go on their BC's gut instinct of, well, I think the volume might drop about 20% tomorrow, but just kind of a gut feeling. So I'm going to create my routes based on that. No. We got to have data-driven stuff going forward. That's just a non-negotiable.
Yeah, that's like listening to the weather report and then planning an outdoor wedding. No, thank you.
And it's never going to be perfect, right? It's just not. But if you don't have any system at all, you're really behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, that's right. Cool. So that's one piece of one of the tracks that we're going to be covering is, again, the more granular operation strategies that we're really going to be diving into. But that DRO piece, again, I just can't speak highly enough of the content that I've seen and the change that it's making for operators. So you want to be able to tap into that. The next one that I want to talk about, as again, we kind of talk about how we're really going to be getting further into the weeds of our content this year and down those talk tracks. So trick question here, but Jesse, I just dropped a little hint. What would you say the number one frustrating disqualifier of driver candidates is, or even existing drivers that you have on the road?
Well, I'd have to say it comes down to the phrase we hear a lot, which is, well, it's legal in my state. Why can't I do it, right? It's absolutely going to be marijuana, right? So the cannabis laws, which are now different, no matter what state you go to, you're going to have a different set of circumstances. And obviously there's a big difference too between Amazon and FedEx here, where, Amazon has the 4-panel test. FedEx requires that 5-panel to remain DOT compliant. And that's really the big one where, people say it's legal in my state. Why can't I do it and keep my job? It's just a huge pain point.
Yeah, we are going to do a whole deep dive into weed at our expo. What in the world, you guys? I told you things were changing, but can you imagine a weed segment at the Route Consult Expo? But it's really important information and it's really pertinent content to what we're seeing play out across the country. And with that, we're also really just going to be diving into those state-specific laws that can really have an impact on your hiring, workplace practices, how to be compliant, how to be competitive there in hiring practices, and again, just how to really protect your business, especially when dealing with state-specific requirements. And so that's something that we've really started to see emerge more than ever, right? As different states are taking different stances, we're seeing policies come forward that have huge impacts on the day-to-day operation. So we're going to be talking through really specific strategies on how to combat those areas. We've got excellent HR teams that are going to be there covering, hiring processes, again, in those different states, and how to protect yourself from, again, what we sometimes refer to as those sleeping giants in the space, right? That you can be an amazing operator, but just like with safety, right? If you don't have a good safety strategy and your drivers are bumping into things, we've seen how that's progressed this year. It can have significant financial penalties on the business. It can bring increased liability, just additional day-to-day frustrations. It's the same thing on workplace and hiring practices, that you can overlook something there and end up with extremely costly or high risk challenges, as opposed to just putting the right systems in place and being able to avoid a lot of those headaches. So that's definitely one that we're going to talk through. We're also going to spend some time talking through disability, work comp, how those also vary state to state, and then again, how we stay competitive and attacking those different issues. And again, trying to control overall the bleed, but also, again, making sure that we're protecting the enterprise at a higher level there. So very excited about that content. Again, we've seen some snippets. We have a road show. And again, you'll see the similar structure with our road shows this year, that we are going to be in Philadelphia on June 1st doing an HR and recruiting road show. So again, it's not the same content that's going to be covered at the expo. It's a piece and it's a kind of a different track, but it's within that family. So it's a little snippet of the bigger content that's going to be covered at our expo this year. So you'll want to be at that, but again, just not the same content that's actually going to be at the expo this year. The next one that I wanted to talk through is obviously the broader market and what we've seen in just the macroeconomic climate and how that's impacting things. We talked a little bit on volume predictability and how we've seen some of that flow through already. But we've definitely seen, major changes with inflation behaving the way that it is, with interest rates increasing, the way that they are. Definitely fuel prices continue to be a pervasive topic that's obviously impacting contractors. And we continue to have really exciting traction in the fuel space to try to bring better savings to the operators in that area. But we're really going to be diving into financially how you continue to defensively posture. And as we start to see some of this shift with some of the changes we're anticipating in 2023, which again, we're going to talk about, how do you capitalize, right? How do you adapt? Last year, we had a lot of conversations around, if you can't sustain a season of pain, you need to get out, you need to sell, right? We started those conversations early last year that if you don't have substantial cash reserves built, it's probably not the time to be trying to hold out or trying to grow, trying to invest. And again, we want to try to stay on the front end of those things historically as we have, in anticipating what changes are coming next so that we start positioning now for what we expect the next 12 to 24 months to look like, and how you stay defensively postured, but actually start positioning yourself for growth and for expansion. And so we've got some exciting, really cool announcements that are going to be coming out in those areas this year that, again, can be absolutely game changers for operators. So excited to be able to delve into that. We'll talk about cash flow planning, CapEx, investment diversification. We've got, again, just a lot of really cool topics and some fun announcements I'm excited to make at Expo this year. So that's number 3. The fourth one that I definitely wanted to make sure that we had time to talk about, Jesse, is we are going to also be doing a dedicated line haul track this year. So that's something that people have been asking us for forever. And so we've got all the right pieces in place now. So we have some awesome dedicated line haul content coming to you guys. Again, we are actually going to see y'all in just a couple weeks here on March 30th in Kansas City for our line haul roadshow. So that's a fully dedicated line haul event. March 30th in Kansas City. I'm super excited about that one. That is kind of the heart of the line haul world in Kansas City there. We get so many major operators and operations moving through that hub there. So it's a great place to come and share best practices, share knowledge with other phenomenal operators. We've got some really fun content planned for that. And then at the actual line haul track within the expo, we're going to be covering everything really from the shortage of power that we're seeing in the space right now, and basically how to differentiate yourself to make sure that you are able to take advantage of those opportunities when we are, again, continuing to see that power shortage in the line haul space. We're going to be talking about strategic scaling. We're going to have our mastermind clients there as well, covering some big topics in terms of how we've seen that group able to grow and expand strategically in the line haul space for the last few years. So they've got some really exciting content. So we'll be doing a panel with our mastermind clients there. And then we're going to talk too just about, again, as you scale, building strategic equity in the line haul space. As well as, operational best practices. We've got some really cool safety content that I think is kind of new and first of its kind as well. So exciting talk tracks in that space as well. But that's one of the big things I wanted to just highlight for you guys that are going to especially be different. But we've got lots of other little things that we're going to be revealing over the weeks and months ahead. But just wanted to give you that little sneak peek.
Yeah, and Emily, we're not done building the schedule either, right? I mean, we got stuff that we're still probably right up until the day. I mean, we've got so much we're going to try to pack in, and just so excited to bring it all to you guys under one roof. I want to kind of just real quick before we go on to the Q&A, like we have so many different, things that we're doing here at Route Consultant, and we all talk to each other. So, when you were talking about managing the economic changes, I was just thinking, if you're in a really tight environment where you are, you absolutely, if you are going to stick it out, you have to run as efficiently as possible, right? So that's kind of where we have these different areas. And even with HR, if you're losing people from a recruiting perspective, you have to be efficient with, and how do you bonus the people that you still have, right? So we have all these kind of things that, one thing I love about our company, Annalie, is that we sort of are able to see the bird's eye view and bring all these pieces and teach you how they all fit together and work together. And I feel like all of our strategies, they dovetail really nicely into each other. You know what I mean? So that's one thing I just love about the expo. It brings it all together. Plus the networking. It's such an exciting time for everybody.
Yeah. And, I just to piggyback off of that too, I think, again, it's about, and so much of our goal always has been anticipating, right? And being, again, cutting edge, being on the front end of what's coming. And so that's one of the pieces I'm so excited about this year's expo is, again, just having that opportunity to say, you've trusted us in the past to foresee what's coming down the pipe. And we want to continue to bring that. And we've got some really, again, exciting new initiatives that we're looking forward to being able to talk through at Expo this year. Again, trying to chart that path forward for the industry, for the space, and for all of our fellow CSPs. So.
All right, Emily, let's get into some Q&A. So before we do, I'm going to ask you, what is your favorite decade of music and why? You've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah. So this is a hard question for me though, because anybody that knows me knows, like, I have probably the most eclectic music taste. So like, it would not be shocking for me to listen to like Patsy Cline and then Drake, like within the same session. So like, I really love, I love every genre, every decade that has transpired. But if I had to choose a decade where I felt like all of the major artists from that decade, I could totally enjoy at any given moment, it is probably actually the 70s for me. I'm a big like Eagles, Steve Miller Band, like Journey. I feel like there's never a mood where I'm not in the mood to listen to that, or like Queen, or I would never be like, ugh, I'm not in the mood for this. So I think, and that's a product too of my parents. That was their generation of teenage music, right? And so I feel like that's what I listened to as a kid. So it feels like the soundtrack in the background. So that's my play. What about you, Jesse?
Okay, so I'm going 2000s all the way, and
what?
I have two words for you as the reason why. Linkin Park.
Oh my gosh, Linkin Park. That actually feels so right now, like knowing like, okay, but I would not have. Man, I would not have guessed that. Okay.
Yeah, not the boy bands, not the pop stuff, but sort of.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, if you say Backstreet Boys, Jesse, we're going to talk about this after the webinar.
No, that's for when I've tipped a few back. I can handle a little bit of that, but if I'm cruising down the road, it's Linkin Park blasting all the way. So
that is amazing. So I mean, but is it that whole like are there other artists, or you literally are willing to play the whole decade game on just Linkin Park?
It's mostly because of them. I mean, they could carry it for me, but I mean, there's some other smaller bands I could list, like Yellow Card and Anne Berlin and stuff like that. Most people may not have heard of, but sort of that metal alternative part. That's what's not super heavy metal, but just enough of a pop influence to kind of keep it easy to listen to. That's my jam all the way.
Interesting. Okay, this is going to be fun. We'll come back to this. This is good stuff.
Okay, so we got some interesting ones here. I did peek ahead, I'll be honest with you. So Amy Behar, her favorite decade has to be the 80s. Or Amy, I assume that's Ami. Hope if you're a guy, I apologize. But so Amy asks, do most prospective buyers use LOIs, or do they go straight into negotiations?
Yeah, it's a great question. LOIs are traditionally not very popular in this space, just because, one, I hate to see prospective buyers tie up capital until they've kind of done at least their initial due diligence and are really ready to secure the listing. And so I'd hate to, typically, if you're really going to do an LOI, you're still going to be putting money down. But at that point, we don't know what type of financial records are available. And so on the buyer side, I kind of tend to hate to see that. From a just, expediency side as well, that's a big part of it. So a lot of times what we see is in that negotiations moment, most of the time the sellers don't want to tie up the business, under an LOI for that due diligence. So they're probably going to be entertaining, multiple parties until actual terms are agreed to. And really, the LOIs, they're typically pretty hard to enforce. So a lot of times not really worth the paper they're written on. So it's just not a standard industry practice in this space. So I would encourage you more so, the due diligence process is pretty straightforward on these businesses. If you know what to look for and you know what questions to ask, we obviously have a ton of free content that covers that, but also stuff that, our team can help and engage with you on. But if you know what to look for and what to ask, you can actually do the due diligence pretty quickly, assuming you can get the information that you need to be able to make a decision, and then you're not wasting your time or your money or getting kind of tied up in some sort of potential litigation negotiation. That's just frustrating. So
yeah, good deal. Okay, the next one is from Dan Harry, and this is a straightforward one. He says, music, we got another 80s fan in here. It was the time of my life, he says. Where can I get a link to this recording? And Dan, these are posted on YouTube, usually within 24 to 48 hours after the end of the session. So just go subscribe to our channel and be on the lookout for that. Okay, Annalie, a couple more for you here. Ferris Casey, country music, and no decade there, which I don't know if that's fair because they're so different in the different decades.
It's like Johnny Cash or Taylor Swift. Where are we at over here for us?
Yeah, we might need some specification there, Ferris. If you and then later he did say 70s music and songs. Okay, he came back later and said that. So I guess your more country western is going to be what he's thinking of there. So
okay, now he's in my zone. So I'm you know what I'm going to deduce from that though, because I actually struggled with this. I think I was going to say 70s. I still think of Johnny Cash, but I think he's actually a little earlier. He's one of those like 60s, maybe even a little bit 50s transitions, but I'm going to guess you're a fellow Johnny Cash fan if you led with country music and then we're still hanging in that 70s vibe for us, and he's on my list too. So
yes. Okay. And so Ferris asks, so his premise is, I see these days FedEx they sometimes take assigned and unassigned runs from contractors. So he has some questions about that. So number one, for a new buyer, how can I guarantee the purchased run won't be taken by FedEx?
So I want to make sure I understand the question here, but bottom line from FedEx, taking contracts away, especially with the shortage of power that we're seeing, and again, especially in the line haul space, it's a little bit more isolated here than from the P&D side, but it takes a lot for us to see FedEx actually intervene and take those certainly dedicated runs, but I would argue also the unassigned as well. So I would probably want to connect with you more directly for us, just trying to understand on what you're seeing that's maybe suggesting they're taking the unassigned and the dedicateds away. That's been pretty atypical from what we've seen in the space, because again, it's such a shortage of power. I think what you would really have to see on them taking dedicateds away would be mismanagement, right? So it's got to be, really poor availability and lack of reliability from the operator, or safety challenges, or the other big one would be kind of like an ethical breach or violation where it was really not related to the operations, but again, just more of an ethical violation of some kind by the AO. So I'd love clarification on that, but I wouldn't think that would be a typical piece. And again, when you think about it on the dedicated, you've got those contractual positions. So they're going to have contractual grounds to just take those dedicated runs, and then kind of with that unassigned for them, the unassigned board is it's like a contingency plan. So there's not a lot of advantage to them taking that away, because that's their backup. And really, they're not paying any guaranteed payments on those unassigned. Again, that's their backup to being able to make all the dedicated freight and then any overage above that. So I would say that's a place that generally you should feel pretty confident in, I think, what you're purchasing there. But if there's a specific example, I'd be happy to dig in, or the team could do so.
Yeah, and his other two questions were in line with that, like what should a contractor do in that case? So yeah, Ferris, just reach out to us and we'll be glad to take that one a little bit more in depth offline.
Yeah, there's got to be something going on
there,
specific for them to be taking runs away like that.
Yeah.
But it's probably safety, safety service from a availability issue, or some sort of, again, ethical violation there is typical for line haul.
Okay. So Andy Rod, a whole decade is the 70s for me. Okay, so another 70s fan for you. I know this because I'm always on the 70s for mixed music on Sirius. Okay, yes. Happy to see Annalie back with beautiful baby pictures.
Andy. I'm sorry I didn't name her Andy. I know we talked about it. I thought about it, but it just ended up being Charlie Ann. So it's like in there, Andy, Charlie.
Yeah,
Ann.
a little bit. You got it. You got it in there. Yeah, that counts. So Andy asks, is it possible there are going to be more opportunities to buy networks at significant discounts from contractors receiving a 90-day bronze notice? Maybe some context maybe you needed there, Annalie.
Yes. So definitely, some context needed. Jesse, you're my expert on the metals. So give us just like a quick rundown of the new metals program.
Yeah, so they've essentially, FedEx Ground has come out with a new ranking program for contractors, gold, silver, and bronze. We're seeing a pretty small number are able to qualify for that gold tier. Quite a few in silver and a few more in bronze. We're not sure of the exact breakdown, but there have been a significant number that are in bronze. And so what FedEx has told us is that you will almost certainly lose first right to negotiate if you get in a bronze level within a certain amount of time between when it is and when you have to renegotiate. So it's not as if you can't turn that metal around, but in general, bronze will put you in danger of potentially not being able to get your contract again. FedEx is going to actively negotiate with other contractors along with you if you decide to renegotiate if you're in a bronze metal status. And so this is an example of someone who has basically received a 90-day bronze notice, maybe within 90 days of renegotiation. You are squarely in that timeline of we are going to talk to other contractors along with you because of your bronze tier. And so this is kind of a situation where contractor might be wanting to know, what are my options here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's kind of two pieces that I would say to be mindful of. So I definitely think there's a world where the bronze status elicits a fear, right, from an existing operator and potentially puts them in a state of looking to make an exit as opposed to rolling the dice and hoping that there's a continuity of that relationship with FedEx. So from the simplest piece there, I think it's reasonable to assess that there's likely going to be a surge of inventory as we see that bronze status, get rolled out to operators. So that would be my expectation as well.
Yeah.
Now, the two pieces to consider with that, right, is on a 90-day timelines, like something like that, you are talking about what's virtually a fire sale, even if the business isn't necessarily in fire sale condition. When we're talking about a 90-day kind of required time frame, that puts it into that type of fire sale climate, basically. So I think with that in mind, again, you're going to see depressed pricing based on the urgency that comes from that. And so if a contractor gets desperate because they're in that category, you'd likely see lower valuations, which could be advantageous from the buying perspective. The thing I would caution you, and again, this is where kind of the due diligence piece, it really comes into it, is that especially if you're a new contractor coming into the space, that's one where you really want to understand why we're in that bronze status and really what's contributing to that. Because again, we don't want to see you take over a business that's basically positioned not to be able to recover from that bronze status. And then you're basically purchasing a business to have a similar kind of potential loss of right to negotiate on the business that you're purchasing. So there's the pro that you might be able to get them at a depressed valuation, but there's the catch there that you need to be super mindful of what you're acquiring. And again, there's going to be, from what I've seen, certainly plenty of operators that it's not a distressed or bad business just because it's in bronze status. I would say I'm seeing a lot of that where it's like, we're not really sure, why this is falling in that category. But so I think from that regard, you just need to know what you're looking for to be able to assess the health of that business as you're looking to try to choose the right one if that plays out. So I think those are a couple important things to consider there.
Yeah, and to be aware too, Andy, you may know this, but for those who may not, you might hear, oh, gold, silver, bronze, that's sort of a death knell if it's a bronze. Not necessarily. We don't even have yet. FedEx kind of rolled this out in stages, right? And the next stage that we expect to see is a full data-driven dashboard from FedEx that tells you specifically what metrics are going into your score to put you in that bronze medal category or silver medal category. We can sort of assume, and there's been a lot of rumors flying around about, what factors are contributing to it and why someone can go 500 days plus accident free and still be in a silver tier, not a gold tier, right? I mean, we just don't know what it's going to mean. And there's a lot of things that clearly go into it. But I wouldn't say that at any means, unless you're just saying, literally this is a 90-day or you're going to lose the business. If anything short of that, I would not even say a bronze medal is a guarantee of anything at this point, because we just don't have enough info yet.
Yeah, it's a great point out too there, Jesse, that, and again, if you go back to what the key motivators are going to be for FedEx Ground, continuity of service is always a major consideration. And so just as Jesse's saying, just because something is bronze, they still don't have the incentive to want to see that turnover, right? Unless there's a significantly superior option on the table in terms of service, which, arguably maybe questions about brand new operators, but maybe if there's an established existing operator with, proven track record of success, something like that might, be those situations. But in general, they're still going to want to avoid that turnover. Again, unless it's really an operator that basically is not performing at the level that FedEx wants to see, and they're looking to see that type of turnover in change in order to improve the overall health of the contractor base. So lots of little pieces to consider there.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so Mike Gear, his vote is 80s hair bands.
I love it. Okay, so I feel like 70s and 80s is definitely kind of the clean sweep here of
I'm out of my own here. I get it. That's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And Mike asks, what are you hearing about a potential UPS strike? That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And we're still continuing to see the pressures mounting towards that. We talked a good bit about this in San Diego at our technology roadshow, but it's definitely something where the key decision makers in that space that are kind of appointed negotiating on behalf of the unions there have made it really clear that they're going to push these negotiations up until the very last moment. And so there's going to be a ton of suspense building in anticipation of those negotiations, and not a very long runway to see them resolve. So definitely a really interesting strategic play there. I definitely think it would be realistic to assume that there's going to be some shippers at least that decide they want to hedge those bets and start diversifying to make sure that they're not too heavily leaning on UPS with that impending strike. Again, for those of you that kind of watch the history of the space, the last time we really saw this happen is really kind of the foundation that built a lot of what FedEx Ground is today in terms of volume. So it could be incredibly impactful depending on how this plays out, but definitely a lot of pressure mounting and a lot of conversations. We're watching those conversations closely. And again, as we have definitive information, you will certainly hear it from us.
Last one we've got here, Annalie. This might be, if you guys have more questions, go ahead and get them in. We've got one more here that we're going to get to, then we're going to call it. So anonymous attendee says 80s R&B.
Ooh, see, man, we're getting genres too, but this 70s, 80s vibe, I'm feeling it. I need to go back and pay attention to what happened in the 80s, I guess, because
okay.
I'm trying to think.
I just think it means you guys are dating yourself, honestly. No, just kidding.
What did I say? Because I chose the 70s.
You're right. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So anonymous attendee says, I haven't seen many Amazon freight listings for sale. Is there a particular reason for this? Are they not assignable? What are we seeing on the Amazon freight kind of in the market in general?
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of folks in the freight space that are currently carriers for Amazon on that side, and it's pretty uncharted still, and admittedly on the last mile space for Amazon. Again, everything is still so early, lots of road bumps, lots of hiccups. Their profile for what they are looking for as a DSP, as we've continued to monitor it and have those conversations, is continuing to evolve, I think, as they're building their model and learning about the space too. And in a lot of ways, it's different. It's a really different candidate than what we are seeing, that's really like the right fit in the FedEx space. And so we've had to refine kind of our parameters for helping bring people in on the Amazon side, just to try to meet those criteria. And it's not super easy. It's not, I'd say the vast majority of prospective investors aren't the right fit, for that Amazon, the last mile side. And so we're in early conversations with some of their freight partners, but there's just a lot of proof of concept that still needs to occur in that space before, I think we start really seeing those businesses transact. Lots of concerns around, the ability to meet, external debt service if there's a load of like a debt carried on the business. And so the pressure on that has really kind of depressed purchase prices in the Amazon space and created some challenges there. So again, I think it will be a while before we really see much traction if we do in the freight side.
Yeah. Last question, y'all. So last call here. Amy says, yes, I'm a female, Amy, AMI. Yep. And her second question, Annalie, is when should we expect to receive the documents during the buying process necessary to do our due diligence?
Yeah. Great question, Amy. I would say, and again, it obviously depends on who you're working with, but, we're going to have the preliminary information. If you're looking at one of our listings, we're going to have the preliminary information that would really be needed on file before the listing ever hits the market. That is definitely something that you will see vary, just again, based on kind of where that listing is housed. And if it's with external, some, have all that paperwork, some don't. It's really just going to be kind of broker by broker differences with that in terms of what's available. If you start making requests for things that are kind of outside the scope of that standard due diligence request list, then this can be one of the most frustrating parts of the process for prospective investors, for my team as well, obviously, as we're working with sellers, is just getting that availability of great record keeping and having those administrative solutions available and streamlined and quick is a constant point of frustration. And so again, unless it's on our kind of standard canned requests list, some operators will have it back to us in a day, and some operators will have it back to us in 6 months, and you will have already bought something else by then. So it can definitely vary. But again, it just, I think, depends on specifically what that request is. But if you're going with our standard list, for our listings, we're going to have those. I'll give you one kind of timely market relevance right now is we're at that really fun part of the year as February concludes, March, right, headed into April, where the biggest and most frustrating thing for us always in Q1 conversations is we know that you need 2022 year-end financials and tax returns, but they're not filed, right? Because we haven't hit that April timeline. So many FedEx contractors file extensions. And so that is one of the pieces, is that if you're looking for 2022 year-end financials, again, some operators use the right solutions and they're, organized and have all those pieces. But for some, they're, maybe working with an accountant who's just slammed and says, hey, this isn't urgent right now. We'll file an extension. And we don't see those for a while. And so I'd say that is a really relevant piece always in the first quarter of the year, is that especially if you're trying to use leverage and going through a bank, they're almost certainly going to require those year-end financials once we kind of hit this point in the year in order to be able to move forward and close. It's just a matter of whether we can get them.
Yeah, good stuff. So I have one came in at the last minute here, Annalie. Terry coming through for me, my guy here, 2000s hip hop. So I think in Lincoln Park, they got a little tiny bit of hip hop in there. So I'm gonna count that.
I don't know if I'm gonna put the hip hop. I don't know if you can claim that. I'm gonna let you have it because I'm feeling nice today, Jesse. But
okay, all right. Well, all right. You're the boss. I'll go with that. So. All right, so Terry asks, I heard you cannot own line haul and DSP. Is this true that they make you choose one pathway or the other?
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. I've seen some people migrate from one to the other. Very rare, but kind of some that were early, DSPs or 2.0 DSPs that then kind of migrated over to the freight side. One, I think, interesting piece that we just saw play out with Amazon that's new is they have just started to allow some multi-site DSPs, which is, again, super rare, super limited. They're really only doing that with, I think, really established top tier proficient operators that have had great success. They're letting them expand to some other markets. But what is a really relevant detail with that, though, is we don't see the equity value appreciating there, because with their policies, if you were to go to make a sale on one location, you can't sell all the locations. You have to forego the other locations. You can only sell one if you are going to make an assignment that way. So you'd have to just literally relinquish your rights to the other territories, and you can't sell one and keep two territories. It's like you're either all in or all out when it comes to Amazon. So one exciting development is there may be some scaling opportunities. They just don't come with equity on the scaling side there. So some stuff that we're watching play out there.
Got it. Annalie, thank you so much for being here with us today. We're so glad to have you back.
It's really fun.
Yeah,
missed you guys all, but it's been good stuff.
We missed you too. I do want to say I think I gave the wrong site earlier. So to learn about Expo, routeconsultantexpo.com. If you want to RSVP, you're going to want to go to events.routeconsultant.com/expo23. So that's in the chat. Grab that there. Go RSVP. We'd love to see you there. Thank you everybody for being here, and we will see you next week.
So fun. Thanks. Bye, you guys.